Welcome once again to the Cow Report. And we're coming to you, of course, we're coming to you live, Fred, and of course I'm live, and I think you're live, Fred. We're coming to you live.
You betcha.
What day is it today, anyway?
Monday, April the 3rd.
All right.
Tomorrow's election day.
Of course, I'm your host, Chuck Lee, and with me, as usual, is my rusty, trusty sidekick, Fred C., the True Stafford.
And,
Unlimited.
Can't call you Chuck the Truth Lee, can we?
No, because that wouldn't be funny. Okay,
No.
Fred, now I see you got the flag in the right spot. Now, you sure it's supposed to be the left of me or to the right of you? How's that work?
It's supposed to
Flag
be on
etiquette.
on the right of you.
Yeah, but it's to the right of you,
Yeah,
so it's right for you, right?
and left for you.
Okay. Well, Fred, this is live.
Yes,
We try to give the people a good show out there, and we try to entertain and at the same time educate, Fred.
mm-hmm.
Of course, it is a beautiful day out there, so we hope the people out there raking the leaves and cleaning up the yards have got the TV strapped to their back so they can swing it around and look at it while they're raking the lawns and stuff, Fred, because it's important that they stay tuned to this show all through the summer now, because we will be on the air, and we don't take a break because school's out. We're always vigilant, Fred. We have to keep the word
Yes,
going
yes.
out,
Right.
because this is actually television-free EC. Now, there's another guy on radio that comes from Washington, radio-free DC. This is television-free EC. Of course, we will be taking calls later on today in the program, but first of all, Fred, you know, we always try to stump you on what happened on this day in history, and today is no exception. Of course, since today is the 3rd, Fred, I've got a tough one here for you, and hopefully you can get it. On this date, April 3rd, 1882,
What's this now?
April 3rd,
1882?
1882, just like yesterday, Fred. You ought to remember this one without even straining. It's only 113 years ago. A famous robber named Jesse Blank was killed.
Jesse James.
That's right. Okay, it's a good thing we started out the show on a positive note. All right, Fred. Now, I've got some serious information that's came over the wire in the last couple of days, Fred.
Yes.
One of the most important ones was in Los Angeles over the weekend. 800 police and FBI raided one of the notorious gangs out there called the 8 Tray Gangster Crips in South Central LA, where that was the area that got burned down during the riots a couple years ago. Well, 800 police and FBI swooped in there and arrested 60 gang members, confiscated a lot of drugs and guns, and put them on notice that they're going to start busting up the gangs out there, which sounds like a good deal, Fred, as long as they can keep the sovereignty, people's rights in place, and extricate the drug dealers and the illegal gun owners from the law-abiding citizens.
Yes.
It's a good thing, but it took 800 of them to swoop in there and get 60 gang members. Now, if you run this through your calculators, Fred, if they do this, there's 60,000 gang members, so it will take them 1,000 days, Fred, using those 800 men. It'll take them 1,000 days to bust all the gang members if they do it 60 a day. So it'll take almost, close to 3 years? Something like that?
Yeah.
And by that time, of course, there'll be a whole new crop of them rising up. So they're going to have to, what they're going to have to do is go to the concept of building tent cities and round them up and put them in tents with fences around them and dogs on the outside and machine gun towers and keep them off the streets. And of course, Fred, a large majority of not the majority, but a large percentage of the gang members out there are illegal aliens.
Yes.
And so they can deport them right down south there. But what they need to do is take a hot iron, Fred, and stamp it right on their forehead, IA, for illegal alien. What do you think about that? That way, the next time they come across the border, they'll be easier to identify.
Well, I don't know if I would favor that or not.
Why, you want more illegal aliens?
No.
Okay. We're glad to hear that. All right, Fred. Now, I know that you're eagerly awaiting over there with some hot news, so let's hear it.
There was a meeting with Republican National Chairman Haley Barbour with Dr. James Dobson and Gary Bayer. And at his request, Dr. Dobson and I have been willing to meet with representatives of either party or anyone else for that matter to promote pro-family agenda. Meeting was interesting. As they say in diplomatic circles, there was a frank exchange of views. Haley was upset because Dr. Dobson and I publicly questioned whether pro-abortion, pro-gay rights, New Jersey Governor Christine Todd Whitman was chosen to deliver the Republican response to the President's State of the Union message. He also has gotten word of my letter to Newt Gingrich describing the disturbing actions she had taken in her first year in office. In the letter, we cited her opposition to teaching abstinence and her yearly proclamation of the freedom of choice day to honor abortion.
Well, you know, Fred...
It seemed to me that the Republicans could do a little better than that.
Well, Fred, you know, like I've been saying now, it's kind of like when Reagan got elected, Fred. Everybody just kind of got back on their haunches and said, finally, we've done it. We're in power. We've got nothing to worry about. Everything's going to be a big world love fest. And so everybody slumbered and slept, just like the Bible says, Fred.
No, I don't quite agree with you, because they believed what Reagan had to say.
That's why
but he didn't follow through on many of the things he talked about.
That's why we lost 15 million babies during Reagan's reign. Fred, sure, he did a lot for us. Okay, well, anyway, Fred, so we're slumbering.
What was he supposed to do?
He could have made an executive order, Fred. He could have did a lot of things. He could have vetoed more than he did. He could have did a lot of things, Fred. He could have been a leader and introduced some bills that had anti-abortion legislation in them, Fred. But as we slumbered and slept, between Reagan and Bush, we lost 12 years times 1.5 million babies. What is that, Fred? That's about 18 million babies dead.
Yeah.
While we listened to their fine little, pretty little speeches.
Unfortunately, we had a Supreme Court that made that possible, and
yeah, and who named the Supreme Court? I ask you.
Who named Marshall to the Supreme Court?
Who named the Supreme Court during those 12 years? How many Supreme Court justices were named by Bush and Reagan that were pro-abortion? That's one of the things he could have did.
I know. I agree with you there.
Okay. Well, anyway, Freddie, it all boils down to slumbering and sleeping. And now, it's got so bad that Newt is changing his name to Newt World Order Gingrich.
Is that right?
Yes, he is. And he's going to come on the air and give us a speech here in the next couple of days. But it's terrible, Fred. You know, they've got us slumbering and sleeping again, now thinking it's just one big love fest in Washington, and Newt and company is going to take care of it. But unfortunately, Newt is an internationalist, Fred, a big spender. He likes to spread money around the world. He has some odd views. He likes Alvin Toffler, I think it is, Third Wave and those books. He's he's right on the edges of the New Age movement, Fred. There's some serious problems with Newt, the New World Order Gingrich. And so we got to watch him closely. This is no time to be slumbering and sleeping, because this is when they start taking our rights away when we think we got it made. We
got another thing to watch out for. We have Bill, the New World Order, Clinton, and a number of the Republicans also have embraced the same theories.
Well, you know, Fred, it's kind of like they do battle during the day, but then they all drink at the same bar at night and pat each other in the back and take the same girls home. You know, during the day they're mortal enemies, but Gingrich and Clinton and all them belong to the CFR and Tri-Lather and all that. It's all one big good old boys cigar smoking group in the back room after hours.
One thing that was interesting, I think, was when George Bush nominated Bill Clinton to become a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, showing you there is what should we say, comradeship, or the existence of a relationship?
Well, you know, Freddie, what I was trying to get at is, while we're slumbering and sleeping and they're trying to save these millions of dollars and you know, Newt says, let's take Big Bird away, but at the same time, he wants underneath the table when nobody's looking, he looks around and says, hey, let's give Mexico $40 billion. And at the same time, they're wanting to cut a couple $100 million from Big Bird and them. Doesn't make sense, Fred. If you're going to cut. You don't throw $40 million down a southern rat hole.
I agree with you there, and that's only to pay off the bankers. And if they were foolish enough to lend money and not get any real security for it, then they ought to take the loss.
Fred, we could use that $40 billion in this country to rebuild the inner cities. First of all, we could go in and bulldoze those crime-infested rats' nests down to the ground in most major inner cities. Bulldoze them down and start rebuilding them.
One of the things you would have to do then is get rid of those housing projects, because that's where a lot of them exist.
Fred, what could it'd come to about $900 million apiece for each state. Now, what on earth could Wisconsin do with that $900 million other than take care of that $1 billion shortfall in the education system? See how we're squandering our resources to other countries? It doesn't make sense. Well, anyway, Fred, you know why? I've got one word for it. And one word only. They're chickens. Okay, Fred, well, while we're slumbering and sleeping on these economic issues where everyone thinks they're going to have 2 chickens in every pot, 2 cars in every garage, 2 TVs in every living room, they're not touching any of the social issues, Fred.
That's the most important thing, is the social issues.
They're not touching them with a 10-foot pole. You can't get Tommy Thompson to even answer.
Decency?
You can fax Tommy Thompson and ask him what he's going to do about the abortion issue. He will not answer you, Fred. I've experimented with it. Several people have faxed him. The same with Dave Zien. They will not touch it. They're scared to death to touch the abortion issue in the state.
Well, they ought to stop financing Planned Parenthood.
That's what I faxed to Dave Zien and Governor Thompson and Rob Krybeck. Will you support a bill to either defund Planned Parenthood and not finance them on the state level, or will you support a bill or introduce a bill which will give the pro-life groups an equal amount of money to offset what Planned Parenthood is doing? And all I got was silence from all 3 of the stooges, Krybeck, Zien, and the governor.
Well, you can take care of that in the future.
Of course, they say silence is golden, Fred. And they're all looking to Washington. All 3 of them are looking to Washington.
Yeah.
Zien is up in what's his name's district, running around up there camping out and campaigning. Obie's district. He's dogging Obie up there. He wants Obie's seat. So he's up there running that district instead of his own. He's up there campaigning. Krybeck is rattling his saber saying he's going to run for Gunnarson's seat if everything falls in line and Moan gets taken out of the way. Of course, unfortunately, Fred, there's one little catch there. We got a guy named Mark Lewis who might want to throw a wrench in that works. And of course, we got Governor Thompson that sees president written all over his face every time he looks in the mirror in the morning. And of course, he's never going to be president, but his aides around him think that he can be, so they're pushing him up the ladder, Fred. But the more they push him up, the more rungs are missing. So he's not going to make it, Fred. There's too many people.
Well, what do you think about the election here in town? Tomorrow we got a judge, Patrick Crooks, that has a pretty good record running. He's pro-life.
Well, you know, Fred, he should have changed his name several years ago.
Yeah.
But he didn't. With a name like that, how can he win? Or how can he lose?
Why not? Why not? As good as any other name.
Well, we've got somebody that's been eagerly waiting on the phone for about 15 minutes, Fred. And of course, we want to remind the viewers that they can call in 839-5067. And remember, this is a family program, and it is against the law to make a threat over the phone. And we will take it as a threat if you start swearing, because we're taking that as a personal threat. So watch your language and keep this a family program. Right, Fred?
Yes.
All right. And you've heard it from Fred, the final authority. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, I have a question for Fred.
All right. Go ahead.
Feel about the guy who died at 21. He overdosed or something.
In Eau Claire?
Yeah.
Guy that drank himself to death on his birthday?
Mm-hmm.
That's too bad.
Is that all you got to say, Fred?
Well, it's something I notice, and there are a lot of alcoholics around, but I notice that in some of our young people drink to excess. And I've been in bars in the past where they've had 10, 20 and more beer bottles in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's unfortunate.
Did you know this guy, caller?
Huh?
Did you know this young man?
Yeah.
Were you with him that night?
Mm-mm.
What did you think about it when you read about it the next day or heard about it?
I was thinking about suicide at first, but now I'm kind of cool with it.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, but unfortunately, alcohol is a poison. It was a poison before it was ever used as an internal drink. You know, I know the guy was going through a rite of passage where he was trying to impress his friends that he could hold his liquor, but nobody can hold that much liquor.
Mm-hmm.
It'll kill you.
How do you guys feel about pot?
What do you think about that pot, Fred? Thanks a lot, caller. We'll let you go and then
I'm not really in favor of smoking it, and I've known some people who have smoked it and drank, and they are no longer here, and they left this world in their 30s.
Well, Freddie, you know they're busting people right and left for an eighth of an ounce. You know how much an eighth of an ounce is?
Not very much.
Well, these brave undercover agents busting all these little kids and stuff for this marijuana. An eighth of an ounce will fit in the palm of your hand, and you can close your hand. It's such a small amount. And those people, young men and women, are facing jail time. Their careers are ruined. If they're in college, they can lose their college scholarships and everything. Just over a little something that'll fit in the palm of your hand, closed.
Most of those cases, those youngsters don't get any jail time. They usually get probation.
Well,
and I've heard police officers say, well, hell, I'm not going to arrest him anymore. I arrested him 3 times already. He's gone on probation again.
Well, Fred, there's bigger fish to fry than some little kid that's given an eighth of an ounce to his buddy.
Well, this
we got
is
people
true.
out there murdering. We got people running pounds of heroin. Right here in Eau Claire not too long ago, a guy was busted outside in Washington Township with some heroin, Fred. And we got serious cocaine trafficking going through this area.
Right.
Coming from Chicago. And
what are you going to do about it, Chuck?
What am I going to do about it? We're going to all get AK-47s and stand out on the freeway out there and stop every car and search everybody.
No.
Why not? You asked me what I was going to do about it.
You're not going to do that. I know that.
Well, what are you going to do about it? You're going to continue
I'm going to wait till you stop talking about it and do something about it yourself.
You're going to continue to bust the little kids and let the big shots go?
Well, I don't think that should be done, to be very frank with you.
See, Fred, the trouble is it's at the borders. You stop the stuff from coming in, and then the little kids don't have anything to play with.
I know, and they fly it in, and comes in by boat.
And comes in by military aircraft. It comes in by courier from other countries. The ambassadors of other countries, their aides and couriers bring it in, and no one checks their briefcases or their suitcases because it's considered foreign country property, and they have immunity. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, back on this abortion issue. I know you guys are done talking about it, but
Go ahead.
Chuck.
Yeah.
This I wanted to know. Okay, how would you guys feel if there was a oh shoot,
An abortion clinic in Eau Claire? We wouldn't like it.
wouldn't like it. Okay.
Fred's been picketing down there already.
I haven't been.
What do you think about it? You think they should just line them up and run them one after another and then put them in the dumpster out back, or what?
No. My view on abortion is it should be illegal.
Good.
It should be illegal. The babies are our future.
That's
Okay?
right.
Babies are the world's future.
That's right.
And I feel that there shouldn't be any abortion clinics. I mean, if somebody gets pregnant and they don't want the child, they should put the child up for adoption instead of aborting.
Very good.
That's why I think that for every dime that Planned Parenthood gets, another dime should be given to groups that want to open up foster homes for the children.
I mean, I'd gladly be a foster parent.
And for the mothers, so that they have a place to give birth and they have a place to stay while they're in that process. And possibly, Fred, after somebody shows a little concern for the pregnant mother, they won't go to an abortion clinic and get rid of it the easy way out. If somebody shows a little more concern.
I've recently got letters from a lady named Severa Austin. She is the main person, you may say.
Oh yeah, the high priestess of Planned Parenthood around here?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I wrote her a 5-page letter saying why I don't want abortion, why abortion clinics should be wrong,
Uh-huh.
And I think I basically told her to back off.
Well, just don't make any threats, because Ray Pelrine will throw you in prison for 20 years if you make any threats against him.
Oh, I'm not making any threats. I had a baby, and I could have aborted her, but I could have kept her, but I decided to give her up for adoption.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate, but there are people that have accidents, Fred. I don't care how safe you have safe. There is no such thing as 100% safe sex.
Well, that's true.
If there was, I was going to say, if there was, there wouldn't be, over 20 million people with STDs, Fred, that thought they were having safe sex. And for you people on the south side of Eau Claire, STD stands for sexually transmitted diseases. Okay?
I wish a lot of us pro-life people would get together and just have one big thing in front of the state capitol.
They've had many big things in front of the state capitol, but usually the governor's out playing golf and Dave Zien's out waving the flag and putting up some statue somewhere, and nothing gets done. You can have as many of those rallies as you want in Madison, but if they're not going to introduce any bills, right today they could introduce a bill in Madison that says abortion is illegal.
That's right.
And then they could let the courts fight it out. It's the duty of the legislators to do the will of the people. If the will of the people say, we want abortion stopped in this state, then the state officials, the state legislators can introduce the bill, call for a vote up or down one way or the other. If it passes, then let the courts decide. That's what we have Supreme Courts for, Fred.
Yes.
My thought is the person that had this Roe versus Wade thing, I think they were sick.
Well, unfortunately, it's probably some young girl that was caught in a serious situation and didn't think she had any way out. And so we have to offer ways out and alternatives to just doing the quick thing and the easy thing. So that's where the key is offering an alternative, Fred. Planned Parenthood has the quick way out. They will give you the cheap abortion and then give you some counseling and then push you out the door, and that's it.
They didn't give my daughter any counseling, I'll tell you that, either before or after. And when she got evicted from her apartment after losing 2 jobs, they didn't come and pay rent for her or pay the security deposit either.
I know, that's what I heard. I know you wrote a letter to somebody on that effect, didn't you, Fred?
Yes, it's gone to our city council, our county board of supervisors, as well as to our newspaper.
Well, caller, thanks a lot. We got some other calls we got to take, so I want to thank you for calling in.
All right, take care and God bless.
All right, thank you. Have a
Bye
nice
now,
day.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, goodbye. That caller brings up a good point, Fred. It's we have to show we have to have alternatives out there for those young ladies, Fred, because it takes 2 to tango, and a lot of times the male's long gone.
Well,
after the act.
There are at least 3 homes that will help people who are in that situation.
But see, Fred, right now it's a 15, 16-year-old girl goes looking for an answer, and they get hooked up with some counselor in the school system or a Planned Parenthood. There's only one avenue there. Planned Parenthood, one of they are in the business to commit abortions and hand out condoms and birth control pills.
Right.
And do a little counseling.
They don't do any didn't do any
They're one
counseling
of the
for my
biggest
daughter.
providers in the country of abortions, if not.
I know you're right, but I say they're not doing the counseling. What they told my daughter was, oh, it'd be inconvenient to have it. And after all, you better get rid of it.
Well, to a 15-year-old, it is kind of inconvenient. That's
Well,
why
that
we need
was-
to make it uninconvenient.
She was older than that. She was 19, 20 when she got rid of it.
Okay, Fred, well, we've got some bigger fish coming down the line here, too. You know,
But the average girl should realize, too, that if a man is not willing to marry her, well, she shouldn't have sex with him.
Fred, if you watch that jungle music on MTV all day, you'll be jumping in bed with some
I
guy
won't watch it. I had a block put on my television set so it wouldn't come in.
You wonder
And
why.
I would recommend to parents that they do likewise, or that they tell cable that they don't want it on there.
That is a despicable network, Fred. And the thing is, it influences those young minds that are still pliable. And they
Right.
know it. They know it, and that's why they produce that trash. I call it jungle music. If you sit and watch that day after day, you're going to get some ideas on what to do. I don't care if you're 15 or 20. It's going to start giving you ideas on things that you shouldn't be getting into that you are getting into. And there's no way around it, Fred. Brainwashing is brainwashing. I don't care if there's music with it or not. You know what I mean?
Yes.
What do we got? Somebody on Channel 2 here?
You got somebody on 1 and 2.
All right. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, Chuck.
Yeah.
I take it you're a pro-marijuana type person then?
I'm not for filling up the prisons with people that are involved in marijuana when we've got serial rapists, serial killers, heroin being run back and forth between Chicago and Minneapolis and
we
Milwaukee.
We got pornography here
Superior.
in Eau Claire that's
We got some
illegal.
bigger fish to fry, that's what I'm saying.
So then you're for marijuana. That's kind of the feeling I'm getting. I've listened to you before talk about marijuana. Marijuana is a beginning drug for a lot of people. Many people who use marijuana on a regular basis go on to harsher drugs.
I didn't say I was for marijuana. I said the criminal, the laws on marijuana are too harsh, and too much of the undercover agent's time is spent chasing some kid at junior high school or level, or some little low-level dealer when they should be stopping the stuff at the border before it even gets in here. That's where the crime is. The crime is bringing the stuff into the country.
So you're saying that you think that as a low-level dealer, then that's not an issue. You don't see that as a problem. You don't seem to realize that the low-level dealers are the ones who make the big-time dealers the money. If we can get rid of the low-level dealers, we can slowly try and hurt the big-level dealers.
Why don't we just line up the big-level dealers and build some gallows outside of the courthouse and take care of the big-level dealers? They're the ones that are bringing the trash in here. The people on the bottom, I don't care what it is. If you set 100 new color TVs on a street corner, people are going to buy them. That's not the problem. It's the people bringing in the color TVs. That's where the problem is. It's bringing in the tons of it, not the ounces and the grams. You've got it backwards, caller. It's the problem is people are going to take advantage of it. If you dump that stuff in here, people are going to, commerce is going to be created for it. It's a commodity. It's traded back and forth and sold. It's just natural. There's money attached to it. There's a demand for it. That's the problem is stopping it from ever getting in here, Fred. And our borders are about as open as 100 pounds of Swiss cheese, Fred. There's holes everywhere for drugs, for illegal aliens, for smuggling guns. It's just terrible. We need to shut down our borders, make this the United States again of America, have regular borders on the north, south, east, and west, and check every airplane, whether it's a military plane or some ambassador from Guyana that just might have 10 pounds of pure heroin in his suitcase. Check every piece of luggage that comes in from outside the country, Fred. They don't have any rights. When they're stopped at the border, they've got to prove that they're worthy of coming into the border, Fred. And if they're engaged in an illegal activity, then they should be nailed right at the border. Not after the stuff is dumped on a street corner and people that are looking to pay their rent or pay their taxes or something. No wonder people get hung up in this thing and scramble for the money. If it wasn't there to begin with, there wouldn't be any there wouldn't be any commerce in it. So you got to stop it before it gets in here, Fred. What do you think?
I agree with it.
You do? Well, I'm glad to hear it, Fred. I know a lot of times you disagree. And I'm not for marijuana dealers, Fred.
I know.
It's just a matter of we're filling up the prisons with these low-level...
They don't go to prison. They go on probation. And it's like I told you there where a police officer, and I heard him say this, as he left the court, he wasn't going to arrest that character anymore. He arrested him 3 times. He says he's going to be back selling it this afternoon.
Well, Fred, you know, it's kind of like an alcoholic. You know, they've got a problem there. If you just keep throwing them in jail, they just come out, get out and drink again. You got to try and solve the problem.
Well, they didn't throw this kid in jail. 3 times he'd been up before the judge, and 3 times he's put on probation.
Huh. Is he a friend of yours or what?
No.
Okay, well...
I was there on something else when this kid got up. Incidentally, I know him and I know his mother.
I think we got another call, Fred. I just heard some bells ringing. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, what's your guys' thoughts on pornography?
Fred, what do you think about that pornography stuff?
Well, pornography, I can tell you, causes lots of problems.
What do you think about it, caller?
I don't know. I just...
Well, you know, it seems, you know, there's a good film you could watch on that. It's Ted Bundy, and I know some people say he was just trying to get out of being electrocuted or whatever they did to him that night, Fred. But this was, there's a film where it shows him being interviewed, and he said that he became addicted to the pornography, and he needed a more violent type of pornography every time he watched it. He wanted something more violent, and he couldn't get it in the dirty bookstores, so he started acting it out in real life. Isn't that amazing, Fred?
He could get it in the dirty bookstores too. They even have snuff films where they kill them on camera.
Well, Fred, right now, well, there have been several, but there's a case recently where a little girl about 5 years old was kidnapped, and the authorities think, are almost positive, that she was used in a snuff film where she was raped. A 5-year-old girl was stripped, raped, and then they filmed murdering her on the screen, and then they sold it as a snuff film around the United States of this little girl being raped and murdered and tortured on screen. Now that's the kind of trash that's out there, Fred.
I know.
And there's a market for it. That's what's even sicker.
I know. People don't know right from wrong, and unfortunately, the churches in many instances fail to talk about it.
The churches in many instances fail to talk about anything but flowers and honey. Hey, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hi.
Hello.
I'd like to have a question about drugs, marijuana.
All right.
So you're saying if you have 100 of those color TVs, you're calling them, then you've got 100 ounces, just ounces of marijuana going around, then if you get more and more of those people, you're having tons and tons of marijuana just being sold on the street.
Yes.
Exactly. So why shouldn't you go after the people just selling eighths of ounces? Same amount being sold as there are as the big-time dealers.
How about just taking the big-time dealers out and shooting them between the eyes, like they do in Russia, or shooting them in the back of the head? That would stop that big-time dealer from bringing in that 100 ounces and putting it on the street corner. What do you think about that, Fred?
Well,
I mean, they're bringing
I think
that...
the guy should get should be put on trial,
And then shot.
He should be dealt with justly.
Fred, if somebody's bringing in 1,000 pounds of heroin, pure heroin, dumping it on the streets, and then we see the after effects of that being dumped in the United States, we see the movie stars that are dying, we see the treatment centers filling up again with heroin addicts. There's a new epidemic of that coming on down the line. If somebody is bringing that much in, they're getting rich, filthy rich, Fred, off the misery of people in the United States. They should be summarily shot after a short trial because they're destroying the lives of thousands of people with what they're bringing in. They're the ones that are causing the trouble in this country, Fred. It's not.
I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you.
It's not the addict on the street corner that's hooked.
They have to be tried and they have to be found guilty and then
Shot.
dealt with justly.
And then shot. If they do it like, okay, Fred, I've got a perfect solution to it right here. And this is one of the few cases that I'm for the death penalty in, Fred. Here's what they do in Saudi Arabia. This was dated
Cut the arm off?
3/30/95. Saudi Arabia Thursday beheaded 2 Saudi men for separate murders. The beheadings raised the number of people executed in the kingdom in March to 30. That's about one a day. An unusually high monthly toll. The news agency said that 2 Saudi men had killed 2 other Saudi men in separate murders. The conservative kingdom executes convicted rapists, murderers, drug smugglers, and other criminals in enforcing strict Islamic laws. But the beheadings are usually carried out on Fridays in a public square afternoon prayers. It is unclear why there have been an unusually high number of executions in the kingdom this month. Saudi Arabia halts executions during the holy fasting month of Ramadan, Fred. Isn't that nice?
Mm-hmm.
So there you have it, Fred. That's what they do over there.
Yes.
That's for rape, Fred. That's not even for murder. Drug smugglers. Drug smugglers are beheaded in Saudi Arabia, Fred.
Mm-hmm.
Now, wasn't Saudi Arabia the launching point for Desert Storm?
Yes.
Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, I was wondering what you guys think about the future of the United States of America.
How far into the future?
Next, I don't know, 20 to 30 years.
Okay, good question. Fred, what do you think about that?
Well, we have to stop spending money like drunken sailors, because if we don't, we'll be bankrupt before that time.
Well, Fred, you know, there is some serious problems out there. Some people say that we're not even going to have 96 elections, that martial law could be declared. I know Janet Reno wants a 2,500-man private army that she can use as a strike force to go into any situation like Waco and wipe the people out. She wants 2,500 men and women at her command that within an hour's notice they can be on planes and zero in on an area. Say they want to go into Chicago and hit Louis Farrakhan.
I don't think they'll go after Louis Farrakhan, to be very frank with you.
Well, this is just
They might go after somebody else.
Okay, let's say Bo Gritz up there in Utah, or wherever he's at.
Might be.
Say they want to get their 2,500-man army together. They'll get on airport. They'll get on transport planes. They'll get on military planes. They'll fly into.
Well,
Boise.
that shouldn't be allowed. She shouldn't be given that army.
She'll fly into Boise, Idaho, with her 2,500
And that's
men.
unconstitutional.
What it's called, well, Fred, it's not going to be it's called H.R. 97. Representative Barbara Kennelly, Democrat from Connecticut, recently introduced the Rapid Deployment Strike Force Act, which would allow the Attorney General, Butch Reno, to establish a 2,500-man rapid strike force of federal law enforcement officials and empower the Attorney General to deploy the force anywhere throughout the country to deal with any number of unspecified, quote-unquote, crime problems, Fred. What do you think about that? Doesn't that sound like shades of the SS?
Yeah, that doesn't sound too good to me.
Well, that's been introduced. H.R. 97 coming down the
One
pike.
of two.
Coming down the pike, Freddie. Okay, I think we got another call here, Fred. If we can get this machinery working right, you know, sometimes these machines don't work right, Freddie. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about the thing on marijuana. What about the cost for taking down all the big drug dealers?
It's well worth it. We've had phony drug wars by Reagan and Bush and Clinton, where they've done nothing. As a matter of fact, the heroin is so pure on the streets now that people die injecting it into their arm. It's so pure. So that is the one way you can tell how much drugs are on the street, how pure the drug is. When they got 97% pure cocaine and 98% pure heroin on the streets of New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Des Moines, Iowa, then you've got problems.
Okay, I agree with Fred. Or that one caller before, or something like that. If you take down all the small-time drug dealers, I think it would give the big drug dealers a harder time. They wouldn't have much more business.
Yeah.
And
Well, you know, that's kind of like trying to like a mother snake keeps hatching out young snakes and they're squirming all over the place, you can keep killing the small snakes, but the mother snake is hatching out more. So what the best thing to do is, caller, is to just chop off the head of the mother snake, Fred, and then they won't produce any more young. But what that main dealer is doing is he's nurturing and helping bring along these younger drug dealers, bring them into the business. So if he is taken out of the picture, then a new one rises up. So you just got to keep taking, instead of tying up all the law enforcement on messing around with 50 low-level dealers and users, Fred, why not take out the guy that's supplying the 50, and then you cut off the 50 low-level users and dealers. Just chop off the head of the leader in more ways than one, Fred. As a matter of fact, Freddie, we could just have a plane that goes over to Saudi Arabia once a week, filled up, 747 filled up with drug kingpins, and send them over there on a Friday morning, and after the noon prayer on Friday, off with their heads, and then our hands are clean. Okay, now, Freddie, did you have something to say about that? Let's get this. I think we got another call here we can take in a second. Excuse me, Fred. We had the wrong line there. Somebody had something else talking.
Yeah. Hello?
Hello.
Hi. How you doing?
Fine. How are you tonight?
Good, real good. I'd just like to ask you what you and Fred, what you thought about the overpopulation problem maybe of the future, like 20, 30 years down the road.
All right. Thank you, caller.
I think there's plenty of places that the people can be put. Up in northern Wisconsin, you go sometimes miles without seeing a house.
Yeah.
The unfortunate part about it is they don't have any employment up there.
Freddie, that's just a bugaboo. If they wanted to populate these sparsely populated areas with the ease of bringing in electricity, they could set up, Hutchison could set up a plant in the middle of nowhere in northern Wisconsin, and I guarantee you that 1,500 people would make it up there to go to work. It's a bugaboo. It's a phony baloney. There's enough land around the world to take care of probably 10 times the population.
But unfortunately, most of the people go to the cities.
Yeah, the cities are crowded.
The cities doesn't have employment for them all.
The cities are overcrowded, but it doesn't mean there's not enough land to go around. There's plenty.
That's true.
Plenty of land, Freddie. Okay, Freddie, you heard first on this show a couple of weeks ago where I was talking about the United States government is letting out bids to dismantle the Ukrainian silos.
Yes.
Of course, the missiles are long gone. They're back in new silos in Russia. But to back me up on this, some people thought that I might not know what I'm talking about. The bid is still open for a few more days in case you'd like to bid on dismantling the 130 silos. And they're large silos over there. Probably over the weekend you saw Perry, the defense secretary, was over in Ukraine observing the lifting of one of the missiles out of the silo. Now, it didn't say where that missile was going, Fred. It just said it was leaving. But now here it says, Perry and Ukraine's defense minister, Valery Shmirov, watched as the heavy missile was raised from silo number 8. It was the 42nd missile to be removed. Ukraine's nuclear arsenal had included 130 SS-19s and 46 10-warhead SS-24s. So each one of those SS-24s had 10 warheads on it, which were capable of destroying cities the size of Chicago. So, Freddie, now the United States is going to dismantle 130 of those silos, but they never said anything about the other 46 silos. This bid is for that 130. So it looks like the U.S. taxpayer is going to pay for the dismantling of the Ukraine's missile silos. But the bigger question is, where are those 176 missiles going, Freddie? Are they going on those mobile launchers that you've seen on TV, that the big long semis that they just drop the missile on, it's got an arm that raises up, they push a button and the missile's off? They don't tell us about that, Freddie.
Well, that's why we need the National Day of Prayer, which we will have here at the courthouse on Oxford Avenue, and that'll be on Thursday, the 4th of May, 12:20 to 12:40. And we can pray for our country, we can pray for the world, we can pray for the problems we have, and we sure do lots of them.
Now, where's
Now,
that going to be
God,
at?
God can do things that man can't do. Man does the possible, God does the impossible.
Where's that going to be at this year, Freddie?
It's going to be at the courthouse, not at City Hall. And,
It's meet at City Hall, but this year it's meet at the courthouse.
right.
Probably from now on, because the crowds are getting too big for the City Hall area. Now, you got a program set up. It starts at 12:20 on April, or May what?
May 4th.
May 4th, 1995. Be there. Okay, Freddie. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Oh, yeah, I just have a little input on your drug situation you were talking about earlier.
Yes,
I think you should just legalize it. Legalize drugs, period.
you do.
I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, England, for a good example, they regulate the heroin users. I mean, the government regulates how much they should give to them. That way they're not on the street, you know, mugging people for money to go buy it. I mean, why don't we just do the same?
Yes, caller, that sounds like a wonderful idea. The only unfortunate thing is, Fred, once those heroin dealers run out of their government supplied heroin in England, they go out on the streets and get more. They get right around it, Freddie. So they've got two sources. It just makes their money go farther. Isn't that wonderful?
I see in
They
Switzerland.
get a free source from the government, and that frees up the money in the other pocket to go out and buy some more.
Switzerland, I believe it's in Zurich, they have a free drug zone. And those people that are in it are just killing themselves, and it could be some wonderful, gifted people that are in the process of doing this, because once you get hooked on it, it's hard to get off it.
Of course, they say they're not hurting anybody but themselves, Fred, but they are hurting other people because other people are involved in it from the beginning to the end.
Well, their mothers, their fathers, their brothers, their sisters, their wives, their
Fred?
children.
I guarantee you, Fred, from the time a marijuana plant starts growing in Colombia to the time it hits the streets in Eau Claire, there's bodies laying around and buried somewhere along that trail. People get killed. Okay, I think we got another call here, Freddie, if we can get this machine working right. I know Roy's had a rough time with the machinery today, Freddie. And
Go ahead.
there he goes
My
again.
day.
Well, we're sorry about that, Roy. I was just kidding. Okay. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, Chuck and Fred, I just wanted to, don't mean to change the subject, but I just wanted to comment about what the caller said about overpopulation. You know, I think it's all well and good that you can, you know, you've got over 5.5 billion people living on the earth right now. At the way the population is growing, the current rate, it's going to be doubled within 40 years. And I mean, you can move to northwestern Wisconsin, but what about natural scenery? What about, you know, country living? You know, are we all, is the entire is the globe going to be huge cities? I mean, you know, you got to put these people someplace, and I think it's going to be a very viable problem in the future.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, you know, Freddie, you could take all the people in the world and move them to Africa, and there would still be room.
And you
And
can move
depopulate the
down,
rest of the world.
Down in Texas, they got plenty of room there, too.
And Alaska's wide open. You got all of Canada. You got Greenland. There's only a few thousand people living in Greenland. I mean, there's under 1 million people living in Wyoming. Fred, there's plenty of room.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of how quickly do we want that growth to continue. But there's plenty of room. I mean, AIDS is killing people so fast in Africa that they have a negative birth control rate in some countries down there, Fred. It's getting terrible. And so you can, if you're worried about not having a place to live, caller, you can pack up and go to Africa. There's plenty of land available. In some parts of the country, there's only old women and young babies. Everybody else is dying from Slim's disease. That's what they call it over there. Slim's disease. All right, Freddie. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, Joe, I'm on TV. Hi, Fred. How's your cough?
Still got her.
What's up with that?
Well, I'm hoping that it's one of these days I'm going to wake up and I'm not going to cough.
Now, Fred, you didn't smoke when you were younger or anything, did you?
5 years.
Oh, now the truth comes out. You were a smoker. This is back in what, the 30s though, or something?
In the 30s.
So
You
you've
roll
had,
your own?
No.
Oh. Well, my buddy Joe wants to say hi, too. Say hi to Fred, Joe. Hey, Fred.
Yes.
All right, bye.
all right, well, thanks for calling in, Fred. Well, Freddie, you know you got some. They started the Freddie Stafford fan club out there. I didn't know if you knew that or not.
No. You know something we ought to talk about, and I got a communication from someone that didn't sign it, but they sent me an article in which they talked about the effort to pass the budget amendment, and they had in it that they were going to take the money from the Social Security Trust Fund, the surplus, and use it to reduce the the national debt. Now, I don't think they should take it out of there because I believe they should keep it in. And if they're going to reduce the national debt, they've got to find other ways to do it. In other words, stop spending the money.
I know, Freddie. I know what you mean. Well, you know, Freddie, there's a lot of problems in the world, and one of them is the United States giving money to the Russians. Doggone Roy. All right, Freddie. The Russians are looking for some more money from the West, Fred. And of course, Robert Strauss, former U.S. Ambassador Robert Strauss, he also used to run the Democratic Party.
Right.
He's the front man for the communists out there. He wants more money, something like $6 billion for the Russians.
Well, let him give it out of his own personal finances.
He's going to get it out of your personal finances.
I'm opposed to it.
Because they want the Americans to foot the bill for the bloody insurrection in Chechnya.
Yeah, well, I think
the insurrection,
they should be forced to carry that themselves.
The insurrection is the Russians going into a sovereign territory and murdering and raping and pillaging.
Right.
Stealing people's belongings, Fred, and leveling the countryside. And we've got President Clinton, the pinko himself, is going to Russia to celebrate the end of World War II, Fred, instead of going to the Allies, to England. England is having a ceremony the same week. And instead of Clinton going there, he has snubbed the English, and he is going to Russia to celebrate with his communist masters. To celebrate the end of World War II. Isn't that lovely, Fred? And probably he's going to take a couple $1 billion with him over there.
You know, that man who wrote that, who sent that article into me, he should read this article called "The Clinton Scandals."
Oh, yeah.
And that's in the New American magazine for February the 20th, and that's has offices in Appleton, Wisconsin.
So, Freddie, what they're going to do is they're going to bury all the bodies in Chechnya. They're going to hide all of the people that they've murdered and brutalized, and they're going to keep Clinton away from all the gulags. And Clinton is going to go over there and stand on the podium with Yeltsin and celebrate the end of World War II like nothing's going on in Russia.
Well,
and he's probably
with all the scandals that he's been involved in, that shouldn't be any surprise to the rest of us.
Well, you know, he went over there during the Vietnam War and got orders from his
And why he went there, I don't know.
Well, he was put up in the finest hotels while he was there.
Yeah.
Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, about world population.
All right.
Are you going to be one of the people who are going to move to Africa? We have to?
Who's we?
Well, if the whole world has to move because of population.
You know, Africa is a beautiful continent. I wouldn't mind.
I believe we're willing to leave the United States.
I wouldn't mind moving there at all. It's a beautiful continent.
Okay.
And at the rate they're dying over there from disease, starvation, war, it's being depopulated now. It could be done on purpose. If there's any population control that's going on in Africa.
So for population, you wouldn't mind moving?
No.
You think it would? No one would fight that?
There's plenty of wide open spaces in Africa. It's a beautiful continent.
But people are not going to just move.
What I was using that as an example is if you moved everybody in the world to Africa, there would still be room in Africa, and that would leave all the rest of the world to repopulate.
But people are not going to move.
No, it was an example. In other words, there is plenty of room in the world, Fred, for more people.
Yes.
But we've got these socialists and the environmentalists running around saying that we've got to start depopulating areas. we've got to eliminate people. And some New Age groups say that they can start with the Christians, Fred. If they could just get the Christians out of the way, this would be a better world to live in. And so they want to start with depopulating by starting with the Christians and then going from there. And of course, the founder of Planned Parenthood, she wanted to get rid of the blacks and the crippled and the innocent and the old.
Right.
Yes.
The funny thing is that the people who had the money and so forth were supposed to repopulate the world, and those are the people who have few children.
Well, Fred, my tip for the day to the people watching is read up on a guy named Tesla, T-E-S-L-A. He's the one that discovered the ELF wave, the one that the Obi is desperately trying to close down, the ELF station up north here. You know, those ELF waves go right through the Earth and over to the other side. So if you've got a submarine on the other side of the world, directly on the other side of Wisconsin in the ocean, but anyway, that ELF wave will go right through the Earth, and they can communicate with that submarine on the other side of the world. Well, the communist socialists and people like Obi, they want to shut down that ELF station, Fred, because it'll cut off communication to our submarines, and it's just another little piece in the puzzle to destroy our defenses.
And if the hardliners take over Russia again and we go back to the Cold War, we won't have that to help defend us.
Fred, we got Iranian madmen riding around in submarines right now supplied by Russia. And we've got submarines over there watching them now because they've got submarines.
Right.
So there's other enemies besides Russia, and Russia's one of the biggest ones to worry about because they're the biggest arms pushers in the world, and they're selling to idiots like Iran. And if Iraq...
And to Iraq.
So, Freddie, we better take another call here before we get off the subject. You know, sometimes we get off the subject around here, Fred, and we've got to focus. You have to remain focused on this show, Fred, from time to time. And have you got anything else you want to talk about there?
Well, I see...
Roy, close the door. I'll tell you that, Roy.
Of the people, poll shows Americans want Parents' Rights Amendment. And 1,000 registered voters by the Limits Research Company to determine public support for the proposed amendment. And said 15% said no, 11% said don't know, and the rest were for parents' rights.
Well, that's good, Fred. I'm glad to hear that.
That's only 26%. In other words, 74% of the people wanted parents' rights legislation.
Yeah, usually parents want those things, Fred.
Yes.
Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Chuck.
Yes.
Good afternoon to you and Fred there. I just got a couple quick points to make on what we've been talking about today while I'm watching your show. I'm an avid watcher. One thing I'd just like to say is that even though I disagree in parts of what we've been talking about today, I just hope don't hang up on me just because I don't agree with you. But one, the abortion issue, like you said, this is a family show, and I didn't really appreciate the comment about Planned Parenthood and throwing the babies back in the dumpster, because you know that's not true. They don't do that, Chuck.
Oh, they don't.
They
well, let me tell you something.
They did that down at Luther Hospital when they were doing them there.
See, he's one of those guys who wants to stick his head in the sand and act like it doesn't happen, Fred. It's happening all over the country. Pro-life groups have found the dumpsters. They've filmed the bodies. There's even video tapes available. We've shown them on, you've shown them on your show, haven't you, Fred? I think we showed them on my show once. The Pile of Dead Baby show.
Yeah, that was on your show.
Okay, and that was out of a dumpster. And there's actually been people prosecuted for dumping those bodies in the wrong places, not giving them proper burials, and the priests and ministers have had services to rebury those bodies that they found in the dumpsters. Some of those babies were, 7, 8 months old. They were fully developed. So you can keep your head in the sand, or you can. Where do you think they're going to put those bodies once they start having abortions in town? You think they're going to grind them up for fertilizer in the backyard? Well, Fred, we got to go here. It's time to close down the show here, Fred, and and move down the trail. So we'll see you once again right here next Monday evening on the Cow Report. And want to thank Roy Rogers Hoff and Joel Disprez and the others on the staff down here for making this show possible. Good evening and good afternoon. Have a nice day, and don't get hurt. Don't hurt yourself shoveling snow out there. Adios.
You should have had said something about voting.
Don't forget to vote.
Yeah, vote.